Good morning, and welcome to the First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta. We are a philosophically based spiritual community founded on existential philosophy and feminist principles, and dedicated to human liberation and the protection of the natural world. My name is Patton White, and I will be facilitating today's celebration of life. I will begin with a brief land acknowledgement. The First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta acknowledges that its sanctuary and the homes of most of its members stand on land taken from indigenous Muskogee or Creek people. In the 19th century, the United States of America forcibly seized Muskogee and Aniunuia or Cherokee lands for the plantation economy of Georgia and other profitable ventures that continue to benefit many Caucasian Georgians today through generational wealth. Our opening words. Every plant is an individual. Wrong again. We are not individuals at all. We are all connected. We are all individuals the way each blossom on an apple tree is an individual. This is by Dale Pendell, Pharmaco from Pharmaco/Pia, or Plant Powers, Poisons, and Herbcraft, of all places. But I think that image of an apple blossom being seen as an individual, and yet it's part of a larger plant, or tree in that case, speaks volumes as to what is meant by an individual. Anyway, moving on, we are going to hear from one of our longtime musicians, Aviva, and we're bringing back the song that she shared with us for the first time many, many years ago, called Let It Be. And so I would invite you to rise and body your spirit as you are willing and able to join in singing and doing the motions, as Aviva likes to encourage us to do, of Let It Be. Aviva.
Okay, so this song that we are going to do is by Ricky Byers Beckworth. It's called Let It Be. Just let it be. And so you can do some arm movements with this song. We're going to say, we let the something wash over us. We let it be. I think you'll really enjoy this 432 hertz string sound on my keyboard. So here we go. We let the love wash over us. We let it be. Again. We let the love wash over us. We let it be. Let's change that to peace. We let the peace wash over us. We let it be. We let the peace wash over us. Feel free to harmonize. We let it be. Joy. We let the joy wash over us. We let it be. We let the joy wash over us. We let it be. Good connections. We let good connections wash over us. We let it be. We let good connections wash over us. We let it be. Truth. We let the truth wash over us. We let it be. We let the truth wash over us. We let it be. We let the truth wash over us. We let be. Vitality. We let vitality wash over us. We let it be. We let vitality wash over us. We let it be. Circle back to love. We let the love wash over us. We let it be. We let it be.
Thank you, Aviva. I just love that song. I can never get enough of it. Today's speaker, we have Reverend Marti Keller. Reverend Marti Keller comes into 2021 with a lengthy involvement in issues impacting the human rights of women-identified persons, including being the Director of Community and Government Relations for Planned Parenthood in Northern California, and 20 years of leadership with the Unitarian Universalist Women's Federation. She was given their Ministry to Women Award in 2020 in recognition of her commitment to anti-racism and intersectionality in the approach to women's issues. Her roles included heading the Margaret Fuller Awards panel, presidency of the board, co-facilitator of the new Prophetic Sisterhood of UU Religious Professionals, creator of the UUWF Sermon Award, and affiliated minister. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Marti Keller.
Good morning. It's good to be with you this morning to talk about what I have come to think in my life is one of my underrated senses. I'm a visual person. Maybe for you, sound is a primary sense, but I feel sometimes that it's one of the more ignored in the pantheon of our five senses, and especially important to think about, I think, in the summertime, especially right now in this summertime, and I'll talk about that later. So I invite you, as I talk, to think about the role, presence of sound and noise in your life, whether it's right now or looking back as a child and other places that you've lived, sort of the presence of sound and noise. They're not the same in our lives. From the writings of Gordon Hempton, who's a sound ecologist, and I'm going to be quoting him wildly this morning, a sound ecologist who's also very eloquent. Good things, he says, come from a quiet place. Study, prayer, music, transformation. The words peace and quiet are all but synonymous, he writes, and are often spoken, and I think we do, in the same breath. A quiet place, he tells us, is the think tank of the soul, the spawning ground of truth and beauty. A quiet place outdoors, he has found, has no physical borders or limits to the perception. If you're in a quiet place, one of those rare quiet places we're going to learn, you can commonly hear for miles and listen even farther. It affords a sanctuary where the difference between right and wrong become more readily apparent. It's a place, he has found, to feel the love that connects all things, large and small, human and not. Sadly, though, he reports, as big as it is, our planet offers fewer and fewer quiet havens. No place on Earth is untouched by modern noise, his research has found. No place at all. Even far from the paved roads in the Amazon rainforest, he writes, you can still hear the drone of distant outboard motors on dugout canoes, and from the wrist of the native guide, the hourly beep of his digital watch. The question, he says, for us, is no longer whether noise will be present, but how often it will intrude, or for how long. The interval between noise encroachments measured in minutes is the measure of quiet he uses to define quiet, and its opposite. And in his experience, a silence longer than 15 minutes is now extremely rare in this country and completely gone in Europe. Take, for example, Walden Pond. We all have an image of the quiet tranquility of Walden Pond. It's especially important to Unitarian Universalists, I will remind you. Home to Thoreau's experiments with solitude and serenity. A blogger who lives nearby warned not to visit there in the summer. Don't come visit in the summer, he wrote, because it will be the least inspiring. People come from all over, he reported in his blog, flock there to swim. You will have full parking lots and tons of noise. Even in the quieter time of winter now, there is always the persistent and invasive sound of tractor trucks and snowplows on nearby highways, the drone of jets, the brutal buzzing of chainsaws. Walden is no exception to the situation, even in our wilderness areas and our national parks, and especially right now with the flocking of people to get out and about and not able to fly much, not able to go abroad. The renaissance of interest in going to wilderness areas and national parks, which are actually completely overrun, where the average noise-free interval has shrunk to less than 5 minutes during daylight hours, and that was before anybody went to study what's happening this summer with people's renewed and a very crowded presence in our wilderness areas and especially our national parks. By Gordon Hempton's calculations, the rate of quiet places extinction vastly exceeds the rate of species extinction. Today, and that's before there's been any kind of recent study post-pandemic, there are fewer than a dozen quiet places left in the United States. And by this he means places where natural silence reigns over many square miles. A few years back, fewer than a dozen. This ecologist, whose life's work, sound level meter and recorder in hands, has been dedicated to searching out and preserving and seeking to save silence, has come to think of silence in two ways. There's that inner silence, he believes, that is a feeling of reverence for life, a feeling that we can carry with us no matter where we go, even on a noisy city street. So it resides on that deeply personal, inner level, soul level, people describe it, spiritual level. Outer silence, he maintains, is difference. It's what we experience in naturally quiet places without the modern noise intrusions that can remind us of modern issues beyond our control, such as economic aggression and the violation of human rights. Outer silence invites us to be reconnected to what binds us together. It can recharge our inner silence. It can fill us with gratitude and patience. And it strikes me that we've often been encouraged to seek inner silence, to meditate, to combat outer noise. What he's suggesting is that we need outer silence to restore our inner silence, and it goes both ways. We have a responsibility to ourselves and everybody else to make sure it continues to be something that goes both ways. In his own quest for inner and outer quiet, when Gordon Hempton is not staking out square inches of silence in wilderness settings, he makes his home in a place called Joyce, Washington. If not the quietest town in America, he claims, then one of them. His closest and loudest neighbor is a cow, who is often seen buried in fog about 500 yards down a country road that most weeks seeks 3 cars other than his. Not the kind of life any of us lead. The loudest sound inside his home has been traditionally a landline phone, probably now a cell phone, set only to ring once before going to voicemail. And the second loudest is an antiquated refrigerator that hums, gurgles, and slurps to do its job. Mine does, is right next door. It may yet do it while I'm talking to you. It keeps his beer cold and his Yoplait yogurt fresh, so essential. And the third loudest sound is the steady, low hum of his computer workstation, which empowers the business side of his field work. Other than that, just the occasional sounds on school days of the wind-blown laughter from the playground of an elementary school a full mile away. And in the spring, the courting frogs, which is what he describes as an all-night hootenanny. That was his childhood. That was his adulthood. That's the environment, the soundscape he's chosen to create and to live in. And I urge you all the way along this to consider what have yours been. On the other hand, the houses I've lived in from childhood have been surround sound. In the suburbs of Washington, D.C., we lived within close earshot of a busy thruway, which eventually became the Beltway. Lots of noise. When we moved to a college town in California, we first lived in a house on a clogged wide main road out to the Bayshore Freeway and just down the street from an elementary school where the bells marking the periods went off hourly, even in the summertime. If it wasn't the auto cacophony and then in later years proximity to train and rapid transit tracks that filled the airways, it was dueling rock albums. My brothers, one of them liked the Grateful Dead, one of them liked the Jefferson Airplane, and their hi-fis dueled. At that time, their hi-fis. Laughter soundtracks from television that were on from dawn to midnight. Or in the brief time my mother and I lived together in a shared rental house, her insistence on turning on, if not actually listening to the radio every waking hour and into the night. As comfort, she would tell me, I have to have it on. In one of my journal entries from that time, I recorded my frustration that even now at just before 6 a.m, my mother's talk radio show is on. Her constant need for human voices is incredible to me, for whom the balance of some silence is essential. and never ever complete, what with the central heater hissing and the birds chirping in intervals between downpours and the cats tussling, without human interference, without that steady noise of talk radio. By the way, it was progressive talk radio I wrote. There was always enough sound for me. When we lived in California, my husband and I, we bought a house in the winter that didn't let us know that in the summer it was a street racing street for the high school students. And every weekend, the police would stop anyway, many of them, and get them for some violation or another. But in the meantime, it didn't deter them. So there was always gunning of motors and street racing. And even so, the traffic on the boulevard right next to us was deafening. When we went to sell our house, the real estate agent took my husband aside and said, I can't imagine anybody buying your house that had any hearing at all. And it was difficult to sell a house that was surrounded by noise. Take it all together, this combination, wherever we live now, of minor and major sounds, besides being spiritually depleting, can become the stuff of what we call noise pollution, or toxic tones. I even like that better. Toxic tones, sound that is undesirable for human hearing. The street noise, the traffic noise, noise in public transport places, noise in playgrounds and parks, noise in shopping malls, noise in workplaces and around airports. And now, as I said, even in our national wilderness areas. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, noise is any sound that lacks agreeable musical quality or is noticeably unpleasant or undesired or interferes with one's hearing or something. As the right to quiet society asserts, and there is a quiet society, itself is highly subjective. Soundscape, what we surround ourselves with in terms of sound, culturally and just personally, is individual in lots of ways. And it varies from neighborhood to neighborhood, town to town, city to city, country to country. To some people, the roar of an engine is satisfying or thrilling, obviously, because there's so much of it going on that towns all over here, city of Atlanta, is having to renew stricter ordinances and arrest people for running red lights and stop signs if they can't be gotten any other way. To others, it's an annoyance. To a lot of us, it's an annoyance. Loud music might be enjoyable or a torment, depending on the listener or the circumstances. They point out that some people, many people, would not be bothered by the sound of a 21-gun salute on a special occasion. There was one such one on the Decatur Square a few weeks ago during the day. I was walking with some people. We thought there was some horrible gun incident going on. To us, it was terrifying out of context. On the other hand, the thump, thump, thump of a neighbor's music at 2 a.m., even if barely audible, can be a major source of stress. When I was staying in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, it is just what happens that every single night, late at night, usually around midnight, on the roofs of the houses in San Miguel, firecrackers go off. It's a joyful explosion, and they do it joyfully for any occasion: birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, holidays. The firecrackers go off. And when they bothered me, I was told by my friends who live there locally that this soundscape is really important to the life in San Miguel. And it wasn't anything that I, as a visiting person, a person not of that culture, had any business being distressed by. It was part of being in that culture. Sound is measured in a unit known as decibels. There isn't a fixed maximum amount of sound that we can get that's called noise pollution. It hasn't gotten that scientific. But the common sense is that there should be a limit of 65 decibels in the daytime and 55 at night. So with that as a criteria, I can tell you that using appliances in our home alone, such as garbage disposals and blenders and vacuum cleaners, can cause a cumulative sound during the day of 87 decibels, way above the limit of daytime noise pollution. And then there are all of those outside, my least favorite electric tools, lawnmowers and snow blowers and chainsaws and power tools, my least favorite leaf blowers. All the noises that go along with construction, and for many people, yard maintenance, the music that comes out of rock concerts and nightclubs. There's a pop-up rock concert nightclub venue near Mercedes-Benz Stadium right now that is completely unnerving the Vining area neighborhood that's just adjacent to it. Even humans yelling or cheering crowds and the subway trains, honking horns, jackhammers, features of urban life register at 120 decibels, well over the limit for health and safety of human beings. When noise becomes dangerous is when we are exposed to too much noise over a period of time, which groups like another group, Noise Free America, tell us cause hearing impairment, obviously, called rock and roll ears, sleep disturbances, vascular disturbances, disturbances in mental health, impaired task performance, and negative social behavior, because we are exposed to too many decibels of noise over a period of time. The National Institutes of Health says that 65 million Americans are regularly exposed to noise levels that get in the way of our work, our sleep, and 25 million are at risk of noise-related health problems. If it's harmful for human beings, it's also physically and spiritually unhealthy for other living things. While studies have shown that some birds thrive in noisy neighborhoods, even nesting around things like compressor sites, black-chinned hummingbirds and house finches seem to be very tolerant of lots of noise, even might enjoy it. New research findings over the last decade indicate that other species are being found more and more clustered only in quiet areas. They are abandoning their traditional urban, suburban, closer to human beings habitats, moving further and further away from the noise, choosing to nest in those places with much less frequency. Biologists in Montana have published a paper including enzyme stress levels in elks and wolves in Yellowstone to the proximity and noise of snowmobiles. There have been laws passed from the Endangered Species Act that outlawing harassment of marine species. And one of those ways that we harass them is by the levels of noise in outboard motors and the other ways that we disturb their waters, not only just by the chopping, but by the noise that goes along with it. What of the destruction of silence in our world as an environmental catastrophe? What about looking at it that way? The soundscape, our acoustic environment, has been described as a commons. It's a commons. We're all there in the commons. We're all part of it, something that belongs to all of us. There are sound habitats, we are told, no one will ever be able to hear again. They are forever silenced, fully extinct, or hopelessly altered. Gordon Hampton and other acoustic environmentalists, seekers of natural sounds, are working hard to be keepers of our few remaining silent places, to preserve what they describe as essential oral solitude, to create quiet sanctuaries in hopes that by preserving 1 square inch of quiet at a place, for example, like Olympic National Park, they might at least challenge noise pollution worldwide. I am urging myself to be more and more conscious of not only the benefits of sound, outer sound, not just inner silence, for my life, for my health and safety, but my role, our role, in the environmental degradation that goes along with noise that is not tolerable and spirit destroying for not only us, but all the other species of the world. From a Quaker poet, I need not shout my faith. Thrice eloquent are quiet trees and the green listening sod. Hushed are the stars whose power is never spent. The hills are mute, yet how they speak of God.
Thank you so much, Marty, again for your words today. For those who are able to, please join us on Zoom immediately following this broadcast. You will be able to find the link to the Zoom meeting in the comments section of today's broadcast. Next week, we hear from Reverend Kimball Sorrells with their talk, Father's Day for the Modern Spirit. We hope that you either join us on Zoom or hope to see you next Sunday at 11 a.m. Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day today, the weekend, and the coming week. Bye-bye.
you.